borders. There's nothing neither you or I or anybody can do, including 34 ministers. It is the world in which we live in. People need to wake up to the reality that globalization is not a cliche. I challenge my friends to start analyzing on their daily life, from the moment they wake up until they go to bed, the products they use. From the
toothpaste to the hairbrush to the shampoo.
And you will see the number of countries that you yourself. So this is not... So all these misguided attacks on FTAA is causing all these things. Quite the contrary. FTAA is an effort to give this thing a sense of direction. This train has, in fact, left the station, this globalization, and it's not anyone who can stand in front of it. It will run over you. So if you're wise, you would try to figure out a way to get on it and steer it. And that's what we're trying to do in FTAA. As usual, government is behind the private sector and global. It's just a major historical paradigm shift, very similar to the Industrial Revolution. So people have to start trying to find an easy target. There are no easy answers. We have to address some difficult issues about retraining certain people in certain jobs.
Sure. And I understand that there's the Trade Negotiations Committee that is part of these negotiations.
Right.
That I think we have a graphic of the different entities involved in the Trade Negotiations Committee. Perhaps you can bring those up on the screen. They're addressing issues such as market access, agriculture, services, investment, government procurement, intellectual property, competition policy. What were the others?
There's 8, 9 of them, and actually there's 11. But then they're basically working groups. It's just the way they divide the work, and it's a very tedious and comprehensive work that has been going on for close to 9 years. A lot of progress has been done.
And I think one of the most important would be the competition policy, subsidies, anti-dumping and countervailing duties, and dispute settlement.
Yeah. What happens is, because you get so much misinformation, I think we've accomplished, I'll just guess, 90%, 95% of the agreement. I think, as usual in life, whether it's business or public life, the difficult decisions are left to the end. And so we are at the end. And there are issues that are tough, like agriculture, protection of intellectual property, which is the industry you're in, that are difficult. And they're difficult particularly, as I said earlier, because they are competing domestic industries and because we live in democracies, but we're healthfully, that's why negotiations are all about, to negotiate.
And one last question, we're running out of time, but in the context of Asia's growing power, some people are suggesting that the FTA is really the U.S.'s last hope for trying to compete with these...
Big lie.
Okay.
First thing you have to understand of FTA, it is not a United States initiative, and we need to stop that from being continued. It is originally started by 34 Democratic leaders, common agenda, ratified now 3 times, Miami, Santiago, Chile in 98, and Quebec City. It is not a U.S. initiative. The U.S. is firmly committed, along with its allies, all 33 other countries, for this process, but it's not a U.S. initiative.
So would it be appropriate to say it is a good initiative for the region to compete
with? But it's important to emphasize that it's a common agenda designed and articulated by 34 sovereign nations, of which we're only one of them. Yes, we are the biggest one, biggest economy, but it was not our initiative, and we are in with the same agenda as St. Kitts and Nevis and smaller nations. And that's why you get the misguided attacks on the U.S. from certain sectors, where we are in fact committed to having been at the same table 3 times now, and soon to be a 4th in Mexico coming up in the next month, to continue this working together for the first time in this hemisphere.
Okay. Well, we'll stay tuned for more comments and information on the progress of the FTAA after this break.
Ladies and gentlemen, Ed, our company's new president.
Wow. That reminds me of how President William Henry Harrison, 9th American president, caught a cold on Inauguration Day. 31 days later, boom, dead. Yeah, completely dead. 6 feet under.
It's fun to know history. Find curious facts from America's past at loc.gov, the Library of Congress website.
Welcome back to Miami's Global Connection. I'm Whitney Belker. I'm honored that the current U.S. Ambassador of the Organization of American States, Ambassador John Maisto, is here to join us today. President Bush nominated Ambassador Maisto in March of 2003, and he was named U.S. Coordinator for the upcoming Summit of the Americas, scheduled in Mexico in January 2004. Ambassador Maisto served as Special Assistant to President Bush and Senior Director for Western Hemisphere Affairs for National Security Advisor to Dr. Condoleezza Rice for over 2 years. Ambassador Maisto was the U.S. Ambassador to Venezuela from 1997 to 2000, and he was previously served as Ambassador to Nicaragua from 1993 to 1996. Welcome, Ambassador Maisto.
Thank you very much, Whitney. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Let's first start by talking about what is the Organization of American States.
The Organization of American States, known as the OAS, is the oldest regional organization of countries that exists in the world. It started back in 1889. The short answer is the OAS is just like the United Nations, only it is in the Western Hemisphere, which means Canada, the United States, Mexico, the Caribbean, Central America, and all of South America.
And how many member states?
34.
34. Excellent. Well, there's been a tremendous amount of criticism of President Bush's administration, and what some people would say has been a lack of attention toward the Latin America and Americas region. What do you think about that?
I think that the facts belie that perception. Let's look at the record. President Bush, from the beginning of his administration, has put heavy emphasis on Latin America and the Caribbean in 3 areas, in terms of 1, the need to pay attention to the strengthening democracy and supporting democratic institutions. 2, to the economic area in terms of trade and moving to get a free trade area of the Americas by the year 2005. And everybody who lives in Miami knows about that one.
And you believe that the administration has been actively pursuing these initiatives from the beginning?
Oh, it has been indeed. President Bush got trade promotion authority from the Congress, which had been very elusive in previous years. And the administration negotiated a free trade agreement with Chile, which also had been difficult to get. It is now negotiating with Central America, and the objective is to get to 2005 for an area-wide free trade agreement. Thirdly, the emphasis is on security, as it should be in the post-September 11th world. We have good cooperation. And the Organization of American States is the entity that has been called upon by the leadership of the hemisphere through the Summit of the Americas process to carry out many of the things needed to enact this agenda.
Okay, so you're saying that perhaps the OAS is acting as a greater catalyst for these different initiatives.
Not only as a catalyst, it's acting as an agent of the president's in such areas as fighting narcotics trafficking through an organization called CICAD, through its international conventions on against corruption and against terrorism, and in supporting institutionally the fabric of trade of trade institutions throughout the hemispheres, particularly in the smaller countries.
Right, and there's been a lot of change in the Latin American region throughout the last couple of years. A number of new presidents are now acting presidents. So Is that one of the reasons why we are